will look like. Um, and that's being finalized at this point. And so we'll be able to stagger start and do some things that are on this document with that. So that's what this group is doing right now. We do have a step process if we were sent home. We've got the process in place to make that available virtually to students. That same process, I believe, will be available to students that are sent home because of COVID. So for example, if there was a case and they're home for 10 days, the quarantine time, I think it's 10 now, maybe it's still 14, I'm not sure. But then they'll be able to access materials and stay involved and engaged in their education. So that we do have that place in process. And then we also have this third step that is available to families that are just not comfortable and want to do an online piece. And so we're finalizing that as well. Now that's a partnership with another organization that offers an online curriculum that we would then enhance and help with. And then we would be checking in with them after the semester. So for those families that want to have a strictly, we're nervous about this right now, we're not sure, we want to do online, then they would do that and commit for the semester. So those are kind of the three things that we have in place right now. Again, this group has done an amazing job of putting things together in the last week. I just want to thank you all very much for that hard work and the document that went out as the 2.0, as we would say. Gary, you want to get some highlights out here of areas that we want to kind of touch base on first off the document, and then we'll open it up for some other things that I have.
Okay, so basically, I'm probably not going to go off of the document, but there were several items that I started off making a parking lot, and then I just turned into a list of stuff based on what everybody came up with. And so it's in the items to clarify and discuss. And I think I sent that out. Did I not? Uh-oh, shoot. Thought I did.
Are you talking about like screening guide and symptoms?
You did.
You know what? I moved that over to my notes, and I thought I sent my notes out, but I didn't.
You did send it out.
You did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's the first few lines on there, and some of these are verbatim, or most of them are verbatim from people's comments. And basically what happened was either I don't have enough information to make an educated, guess on what it should be in the document, or it's stuff we probably just need to clarify and talk about anyway. And so it started out with the, I think this was Lisa's thing about the break periodically, which I think is a fabulous idea. I just didn't know how that can be put into the school scenario, but that's an excellent point, because I used to have to wear a mask, maybe not all day, every day, but I've had to wear it for like a day here, a day there, more of a respirator than a mask, but that's a long time. That's an excellent point. So, I mean, I'm throwing that back to the school side, is how can that be kind of incorporated in, at once or twice a day. I mean, they'll be able to take it off at lunch because they got to eat, I'm imagining. So, but at other points in the day, especially if they're wearing a good mask that's tight and is really working, it's not pleasant. So, I mean, I really thought that was, and that's one of the reasons I put it up number one, because I thought that was just something we should really talk about. So, I mean, throwing that back to Dave and Stacy and Glenn to see how can the school kind of incorporate something like that. I don't know if they have to go outside to do it or what, but I thought it was just a excellent idea for the students. So
there's something I can add in there if you want me to share real quick on that.
Sure.
Because I've been overseeing some programs that have run throughout Washington State this summer, as well as other states. And one of the things, according to CDC, if they're all facing forward, 6 feet apart distance, those are eligible times for like a mass break if they're all facing that same direction in the space. But anytime that they're coming in proximity or group work, that's when it's like, no questions asked, mask up. So we throughout the summer have done that at outside breaks where they're spaced out, where masks can have a break, and then the face forward distancing thing is another avenue. So I just want to share that.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, we could take that on into the idea of with our scheduling and using the patio and different things that we have with breaks. You know, in our schedule, there's breaks, and in the past there has been breaks for walking, changing classes, and doing different things. Maybe we can think about that as we look at that scheduling as well.
So the next two comments on there were related to entry. And part of it is, I think a lot of us were confused about whether it's going to be one door or two, if the 9th and 10th graders are going to have a different door from the 11th and 12th graders. I think there was some talk about both. And so I think I left it, the language in there is vague and I didn't specify anything. So that's something we should clear up. Or, you know, if you guys have to decide as a board how to do that, you can add that in later. But that was some comments. And then also just the flow throughout the school. I think you described it a little bit, but I don't think I was comfortable enough with my understanding to put it in there how the flow is going to go. And so that seems like it's a pretty important piece for all of us to kind of understand how the interaction is going to be kind of minimized. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I agree. I think we did talk about in a brainstorming session last time about putting in the other entrance as having two ways in. The more I think about that, the more I would rather just kind of, I think, stick with the office entrance at this point, unless we find ourselves backlogged students, you know, down the street, basically, you know, 6 feet apart, and not able to get them in. I think we could make a decals for the patio outside and underneath the overhang to keep them 6 feet apart as we enter the building. So I think I would like to see us just do the one entrance to start with. As everything is fluid, we know that. And so if you know, after the first week or two, we understand that we're having some issues, we might have to adjust that. But that's my 2 cents on that. But I'm open to other comments on what we can do.
I think the main entrance with 2 tables or 2 trained people who are checking students in will help alleviate some of that, because you can have 1 table for those going to the 2nd floor, 1 table for those going to the 1st floor. But that way, you know, all the students are coming through that one area.
I think the benefit to having more than one entrance is if you, dependent on your class schedule, if you're able to keep certain students just, you know, like half of the school, you know, with their pod and another set with their pod, and you're able to control where they are within the school. If you are needing to shut it down for cleaning, then you wouldn't have to shut down the entire school. It would only be a portion. So I think that would probably be the main reason to have separate entrances or keep people on one floor versus the other, if it were possible. But if it's not possible, then one entrance would definitely be easier to manage.
How many students are we talking about entering at one time as a maximum load?
Maximum load, if we went with, as I read in the document, you know, we talked about having freshmen, sophomores coming in at one time, and then juniors, seniors. If we combine those two, maximum would be 30, 40 students maximum at one time. And obviously you're going to have a percentage that come late, and they always come late. And so those people would be held out. Now, if they come late and they're the first group, then we have to have a place for them to be, so they're not interrupting the second group. So that's a strategy that we'll have to work out. We could, you know, in our scheduling and looking at how we do that, we could do it by class. That was discussed as well with Shirley and Andy, who are helping with the schedule. You know, freshmen at one time. So that would cut that number in half as well. So coming in and flow.
I think if you did it by class, it would alleviate a longer line, if you will, of students waiting for their turn to enter the building.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me too. I was thinking you could do freshman, then sophomore, and then kind of a catch-up group, and then juniors, seniors, and a catch-up group, you know, for folks who came late. And that way it's split into smaller chunks.
Well, and doesn't that all depend on how cohorts or groups going to be isolated? I mean, during the day, and again, in my comment, I wasn't sure about how intermingling happens, if some of the classes are mixed grades or if the grades are going to be isolated. And that goes to Lisa's comment about, if somebody has positive, you don't want to send everybody home, but you need to be able to know who's been isolated with whom. Is that clear? Is that happening like by grade or?
Well, the tricky part with that, if you're asking specifics on the schedule, the tricky part with that is the fact that we have courses like math and foreign language or world languages that are different level grade. I mean, different students are in those. But then we also have courses like English 9 and World History 10 and things that are very, those grade levels are in there. And so the dynamic group of schedulers that are looking at that are saying, okay, well, how can we minimize our movement as much as possible? So on one day, could we put those specific classes that stay together for that day? And on another day, can we do the minimized movement of those classes that have different grades? And then finally, the other thing is looking at the hallway and passing times, right? So if we're passing and we're moving from one class to another, traditionally, which has to change, would be, okay, the bell rings, everybody goes, right? Now it's more like, okay, we're gonna send this group to this student center and they're gonna wait, and then we're gonna send this group out, and then there's gonna be some training processes in place to help that passing time, to minimize hallway connections, to minimize the idea of walking through the halls and having mass for us students in the halls. So those are the items that are high priorities for the schedule as we finalize that and get that all done.
Yeah, I think math is probably your trickiest one, right? Because there's at least 2 different grades in a lot of your classes. And
Right.
so if it's the freshman, sophomore, and juniors and seniors, but I'm sure there's some in the middle that are taking a year up math or something, that's going to be a really real challenge in terms of how you do that. So
Yeah. And that allows us to maybe, talk to the math department and also the world language and say, okay, how can we minimize our movement, and how can we do some things that are creative, maybe virtually or otherwise, to help those days that are so intermixed. Because we know it's not going to be perfect right off the bat for sure, but we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for a successful start all the way through.
So we're looking to finalize one entrance, the office entrance, possibly 2 tables. And then the times, I'll leave that blank. You guys will probably need to put times in because I wasn't sure about that.
Sounds good. Mm-hmm.
And actually what's not on my list that I forgot where I put it, maybe I put it as a placeholder in the document. A really good set of comments came in about things that usually happen in large groups, and we haven't addressed it, like chapel, those sorts of things. What's the thought on there, or is that something we're going to work out later? I mean, we're just going to get people in school and not worry about some of the big group stuff until after, or even try to do it until later. I just wasn't sure, but I thought it was a good point because there's certainly things that seem to be more large group oriented, and I didn't have, and this document is totally blank on that. So
yeah. I honestly, I don't think we've even broached that subject yet. The idea of chapels and the idea of assemblies and things of that nature. I think what we want to do is we want to get some good training systems in place to get back into our educational piece. Our chapels can be simple videos of myself or someone else leading in the classroom during an advisory lunchtime or something to that effect, just so we have that spiritual connection as well as we go through it. But the larger group things, I think that's really from my perspective, kind of down the road in what we're doing. None of that is planned. Like, for example, the WIAA has now moved all the sports to the January. And so, we're not going to have fans. We're not going to have, those kind of things happening either. So, that's kind of a barometer for me as well with those larger group things.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like
maybe-
you could do it via Zoom, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, where they stay with their cohorts, but they still get to participate that way.
Yep. That's a great idea. Yeah.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll just make sure there's a placeholder in there for those. And at some point when we get some clarity on what's happening in the world out there, we could add that back in. So,
Yeah. That sounds great.
okay. And then one of the other issues that we had on there was, are students going to be required to bring hand sanitizers and wipes and all that? Because we did not address, sharing and all that other stuff, or not sharing on there. So whether or not they need to bring their own supplies for anything, it'd be good to know, and so we could plan for it. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in kindergarten, it was on our supply list and the kids brought it. So, they're disposable. So I'm not sure about the sharing, but there's no sharing. But, people can bring in a couple of tubes of wipes and keep them with
That's what
them.
I was going to mention. We did that throughout our programs all summer. We just said they are welcomed. Donations are welcome for wipes and such. And because there's just not the budget, for that kind of stuff. And so people are very open to sending that in.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but my son Evan's middle school had classes assigned every week to have to clean up parts of the school, like all the doorknobs and all that other stuff with wipes. So I don't know about kids traveling through the schools, but if they could do it in middle school, I would hope they could do it in high school too. So
Yeah.
so
I like that ownership piece for sure.
so
Our middle school was the same. Every student had a responsibility each week to clean up some part of the classroom or the school or, something like that gave them ownership and responsibility.
yeah. But the minimum could be they should be able to do their own desk and chair or something when they leave it. I mean, that maybe we
Absolutely.
could put that in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, for the comfort of each student, if instead of when they're leaving, because you never know if somebody's leaving, you never know how good of a job they're going to do. I mean, I would say that when a student comes to a table, that they wipe down their own area and then use it. That's just a suggestion. I don't know.
Can we do both? That way,
Yeah.
like they're not wiping down somebody, like it's done and it's like disinfecting while they're switching classes, if they're switching, and then the new one would come in and do it again just to make sure. Just a thought. That's a lot of wiping down, but for the first little bit.
And will
It'll be
they
like
have gloves? Can we put gloves on that list then too? Of things that they bring with them?
Yeah.
Because isn't it safer to wipe something down with a gloved hand than?
I think the tide is turning from what I understand on gloves. I know that they weren't recommended in our programming. And I know a lot of the rest, Starbucks and that they're pulling away, but I'm not sure.
I was thinking that was more, or what I was hearing was that was more for gloves that are used for multiple things. But if you put the gloves on, clean that area where you're going to sit, then dispose of the gloves with the wipes, then you're not recontaminating anything. You're just using it for that purpose, but you're not actually touching anything.
Just for the counter opinion, I mean, I think given the small community and the limited, it's not like a bunch of strangers are coming to the tables each time. It's the same community. I think I'm comfortable without doing gloves. That coupled with, it does seem like this is probably spread through airborne particles. I mean, again, I don't know, but airborne particles more than a surface. So to me, it seems like asking kids to put on and take off gloves and dispose of them, it just feels like too much for them. So I personally would be comfortable with just wiping down the space, either, when they sit down or before they leave. That'd be my vote.
I think they can just sanitize their hands after wiping down or wash hands, just to to be on the safe side. I think the more that you get into like the gloves and the wiping, it's also going to cut into a lot of the educational time within the classroom too, you know. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
how much time is.
I think the way I would put it is maybe not require them to use gloves, but for some people may want to use gloves because of the chemical exposure part. So if that's their rationale, it seems like you don't want to say you can't do it, but that's the way I would go. Just maybe not require it, but if someone feels like they want to or need to, you know, it seems like they should be allowed to. So.
Yeah, and remember we got that that grant with the private schools, and we've got lots of gloves coming. So so we could have stockpiles of a box of gloves in each classroom very easily with that grant.
So did they have a day that they think that they're going to be able to deliver those? Because there was questions that came up about N95s, and I called person I used to work with at my old job that supplied us with all our safety gear. And I know N95s, forget it, we're not getting them. But even gloves and gowns, he said he's having trouble finding those for his first responders. So I was just wondering if the schools have a supply that is coming to them directly, because the person I talked to works for like the biggest safety company in the United States. And he says they're having problems, so.
Well, all I can go with is what the grant and the email sent to me. He said that on the beginning of the week of the 15th or whatever that week is they're going to start delivering them. So
okay, cool.
That's what I have. There'll probably be glitches. There's probably going to be, hey, we don't have this right now. We don't have this. So, you know, it might not be bad for us to start stockpiling here and there just to make some back, you know, so we have some things back up. But yeah, I received that email confirmation this week already saying that orders are processed and will be delivered, and where do you want them delivered, and all those kind of things. So, but again, I can't, you know, that's all I can go by.
Okay, just kind of working the way down the list. The question came up about the isolation room, and I know we talked about the little nurse's office that's right off of is that the first floor? Where they used to store all the golf stuff and all that, right? So, and I guess the question that was still unanswered with that is, if say during screening we find someone that shouldn't enter the school, are they going into the building, into the isolation room? Are they going to stay outside the building? I know if they're in the building and they show symptoms, we're going to put them in the isolation room until their parents come pick them up and you guys do all what you need to do. But I think the question to me that I wasn't able to answer was if they get screened outside and they can't come in, it doesn't make sense to me to have them in the building, but then do we have a space outside where they could be safe and until it's all sorted out whether they could be in the building. So that was kind of the question that I had, so.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about that with the, I'm running late to school. I think I remember that conversation a little bit. I'm running late to school. My temperature's up, so I'm going to go on 100.4 or more. So we're going to have a place for them to settle in for a little bit and maybe retemp to go to. And so I would suggest that I go and see if I can purchase some of those outdoor benches at McClendon's or something like that, and just have them set 6 feet apart in that area right by the office, and those who don't pass the protocols from the get-go just stay out there. And if they want to retry a second time, they can after, as John said, maybe in the catch-up period. And then if they number two, then they sit out there until we get a hold of the parents, or they are okay to be escorted or home. I mean, the parents give the okay to drive home, kind of thing. That would be my thought. I'm open though. I mean, I'm okay with a discussion on that for sure.
I like the outdoor idea.
I do as well. I think that if we know at the beginning that there's a problem, then they should just not come in the building at all.
Right. I agree. They're old enough to sit outside for a while and not run away or, you know, that kind of thing.
Or
Right.
drive to Starbucks.
Well, if they were, if they were to leave and just say, okay, whatever, well, then they're gone. They're gone for the day. I mean, that's we're not gonna say, oh, come back in a half an hour, go to Starbucks, and then we'll retest you. Either you stay here and you get to the catch-up period. This is just my thought. You get to the catch-up period and you still don't pass. Well, then you got to go home, and you're gonna sit out here until we either have someone pick you up or we get the okay that you can drive home. But that area by the office is covered, so we're not having rain issues. And we also, like there can be enough space, I think, between the benches that will be okay there as well.
Okay. And another comment, and I think there was a question mark in the document from the very first draft too, was the screening at home that we're kind of asking them to do. Of course, we'll need some sort of a specific list, but I guess the question was whether or not the school app will allow them to answer those questions on their own for their parents. It sounds like we were going to use that for the screening at school, but I think that the question or the comment came up about could that be used for the parents to input those questions that need to be asked before they leave for school. So.
Can I ask for clarification? Are you asking, can the parents ask the questions in lieu of us doing it at school, or just as a way to determine whether they should send them or not?
Well, the way the plan was originally set up was it was whether to determine to send them or not. But I'm reading some other documents, and I don't know exactly how they do it, but in other places, and I think Lisa might have mentioned it, that is actually the questions, and they attest to that, and so you don't have to answer them. I've seen some places go like that. Now, that might be more adults than kids, I don't know, but I think originally it wasn't set up that way, but I think the question is probably not posed by me very well, but I think it could be as broad as can they do that too, so.
I was thinking if we have like 40 students coming in a 15-minute time period and 1 or 2 tables, how long is it going to take to get through that whole list of questions and scan their forehead and log it in the app? Would it be more efficient to have the students, go through that screening process on their own from home, and then at the door, they take temperature and verify that there's no issues? I was just wondering if maybe that would be faster and help people get in the building quicker.
I will add that we did throughout this summer self-checks. We put it on the parent for temperature and we outlined it. And then there was the 2 basic screening questions that are the COVID questions that, you go somewhere and they ask, have you been exposed to somebody known? Like those routinely we ask on a daily basis, but it goes quickly. So legally there is some ability to do the self-checks, but you have to ensure that you're following all the protocols.
Well, it seems like a lot of it is honor system anyway. So whether they do it at home or they do it in, to a screener at school, I don't know if it makes a big difference. Like I said, it's more of an honor system either way. We're counting on them to be truthful and upfront, and I don't have any reason to think that they wouldn't be. So,
yeah, I spoke to a couple other administrators about this process, and 2 of them that were in elementary schools were very hesitant about having them self-check because there's pressure there for them to work, for them to be, for the kids to be in school, even their thought process, even though everybody is honor system and there's that pressure to I got to go to this meeting and what does this look like? I don't know if we necessarily have that same pressure. So, my thought of having the school do the checking, which Lisa makes a great point. I'm not sure if that time-wise makes sense to do it, alleviates that pressure from the parent and that have to be at the meeting or whatever. But our kids are old enough to kind of be by themselves as well, so might not be a point here.
Mhm.
I mean, doing the check at the door is definitely, you have more control theoretically over what you're allowing to come into the building, you know, symptom wise.
Are the kids able to download the app to their phone and then do it themselves while they're waiting each day at all? Or is that possible? Do you know?
That's a great question. My initial talk with the company is yes, they can self do that. But I'll confirm that for sure.
So comfort level, people are relatively comfortable with that concept of them doing it themselves if it's allowed on the app. It seems like a lot of people mentioned, it would make things smoother. And I think a lot of this goes back to, you know, the inspirational talks that Dave and Glenn and Stacy are going to give the students about looking out for each other and doing the right thing and all that, because I think, you know, that's going to be critical. And I, you know, I don't know all the students, but a lot of the students I know, it seems I'm pretty comfortable that they're going to do the right thing. And I mean, as long as they're not going to fall behind in school or miss out on something, I think it's, you know.
Yeah, go ahead, Stacey.
Will the screener be able to see the what they've answered? So like if I'm the person screening the kids coming in, and let's say one of my students walks up and I look and I can see what they've answered, because we need to make sure, or will we have a list of shorter questions that we can ask them? Like, okay, did you answer all of these? Would any of these allow you not to come into school? I mean, something that's, they can answer all the questions, but then we can kind of just verify maybe one last time. Because sometimes face-to-face, it's harder to answer a question, you know, if they're I don't know many students that would try to get into school if they're not feeling well, but you never know.
So I don't know the questions themselves, but if they were all like no questions that to get into the school, you could ask them, did you answer all the questions? No, or something like that. I just don't know what the questions are, but maybe there's a way you can ask them to summarize, well, did you, or have a list or a poster saying, these are the answers that, you know, allow you to get into school. Did you answer this way on your app? And I think they'll know. These kids are smart. They'll know. So,
are there going to be any legal, not issues, but legal safe checks that we have to have in place by having a document that says they answered these questions, say the app, or by asking them when they come in, as opposed to just word of mouth saying, yeah, I did?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know if, I certainly don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
If the app does record that and the student can do that, that's great, because then you have that. But if not, then, I mean, I know I would feel more comfortable running through the list and checking it off and having it documented and signed so that I know.
So that could
right now we're doing that with all our athletes that are coming in. And even if they came in the day before, I'm telling our supervisors that you have to go through every question and ask them again. There has to be a signature to verify so that we are in good legal standing. We can't let somebody in the gym without having gone through that list.
Right.
So that might be a good thing to look at the app and see what kind of, if the app has language on there or can have language added that can protect the school in that respect. Maybe that's a kind of a check-in thing for the app. So
yeah, I can do that with the representative after this call. I can send an email out and get connected to her again. Did anybody take a look at that app, or were they able to see anything on that link?
I looked at the app, but it was, I didn't find a way to like look at what a child's or a student's screen would look like.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, mostly it was just general information about what it can provide.
Right.
Okay.
So that was the ones that, the comments that I didn't incorporate into the document. I guess a couple of things. So Glenn and Dave, when you look at it, we added a bunch of things in there. I think Lisa provided a bunch of good resources on things we should be training on. And so we added those in there, and we just need to make sure that you guys are comfortable that that's going to happen, because they all sounded very legitimate and appropriate to me, but it sounded also like a lot. So I don't know what you guys think about all that. So.
I did register for something. It was train.org, I'm not sure, established, and I will go in the next week and try to run through the course and see what all that is.
Yeah, I mean, between that and some of the administrative stuff I wrote in there about the COVID supervisor and documentation and tracking, that puts a lot of onus on you guys, but that kind of went to my earlier comment about, you know, the plan is important, but the implementation is probably more important in terms of what we do and how we do it. So I didn't hear any objections to it. So I just want to know if I need to revise any of that.
No, I think the training piece is going to be for, basically for all of us and our students as well. I mean, I think we have to make sure that we're part of that process. And like you were saying, cheerlead them into the idea of taking care of each other. But we as teachers as well need to make sure that we're aware and trained and understand what our procedures are going to be, and also how to do them, and even for ourselves, right? To make sure that we're doing the app, make sure we're taking care of some of those things as well. Yeah, I think having a COVID supervisors is key, and I think the training piece needs to happen. I mean, it's not something that, you know, ideally we want to do at the beginning of a school year, but it's like CPR. It's like you know, all the other stuff that we go through in that training piece. So if Lisa or anyone else has some people that I've reached out to other schools, like there's an international school in Hong Kong that I've talked to their administrator about how they did the training and what did they have, and you know, all the things that they have in place. But I think I mentioned they have a lot of cameras and a lot of things that help them out in those areas. And I've talked to I called Seattle Christian K-12 today, left a message for their superintendent, looked at their website and see what they have. And asked about, I will ask him again about training and how he's handling the staff, because we can do some things together, maybe with Hope Lutheran as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, those were the kind of issues that I needed help kind of getting more information on. I guess maybe we could open it up to comments from everybody else about the rest of the stuff in the document. Does that sound good to you, Dave?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I have a question about the app we're talking about. I don't know what app we're talking about.
It's called Our School. It was sent out on the email. There was a link sent out to it.
Is this a free app or an app that costs money?
It costs money.
Have any other apps been looked at? And I'll explain why. We've been approached in terms of athletics to look at the possibility of Final Forms, which is has this in their app for coaches and for attendance and tracking. And I don't know if that would apply to students. I also know that Family ID, which we've used in the past, has a tracking app in it. So I'm wondering if they have been looked at as possibilities to make things flow easier.
Short answer, no. Long answer, let's throw them on the table and spend tomorrow morning or tomorrow at some point looking into some of these, and we can balance out the effectiveness of this. This was recommended to us by our district educational person in Portland, Oregon. He sent it out to all the teachers. He sent out 2. This one seemed to be the best one because it offers teachers free. I mean, you don't have to pay for anything more for teachers to do it, and it also tracks them for the whole school year, and you have documentation behind it. But the other ones might do the same thing. It's a $400 cost, I believe, $400.
And if that's the app we go with, I mean, I have no issue if we can make it available to coaches so they can track this too once our sports seasons get going. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's available to everybody. And what I appreciated about it, and I'll try to get everybody the webinar that was sent with that was coaches are able to see who is cleared and who is not cleared because they have groups. And so I'm a softball coach, and I know that these 12 athletes have cleared, these 2 have not. So 1, these 2 better not be here, and 2, if they are here, they need to get away from us and go home, kind of thing. So yeah, it's all inclusive, and coaches would have to self-regulate themselves just like teachers would to make sure that they're clear. And the athletic director then would be responsible if they're not cleared for that day. Coach better not be at practice. But yeah, there's a lot of apps out there for sure. I mean, it's go time for that.
One thing that came up last time too is just potential ability to track kind of safety violations, so to speak, like how many times a student had been spoken with or whatever about a mask, if the app could be doing that. And then also text blasts, just more for emergency communication to impacted groups, because a lot of people aren't readily reading every single email that come into their inbox.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that be done via like GradeLink or the app that you guys select.
Right. I do know the app can upload from GradeLink and Schoology if need be. So the information would be in the app. So I'm assuming that they would be able to send a text message, but that's a great one.
What about one-way, the hallways, having those be one way, or have you guys thought about the flow of students through there, or I don't know, hanging plexiglass from the ceiling and making it 2-way with a divider? That sounds expensive.
Yeah. Well, when the fast signs guy came in with all my signage and kind of laid in, walked through the building with me, he noticed and had been to many other schools that our hallways are pretty wide. And so we would not be using lockers. Lockers would be all shut. And so if we had decals on the floor, as well as maybe a marking down the middle, and walking as much as we can close to walls, we should be okay distance-wise, was his opinion. Obviously, we can make it. My first inclination was, I think I talked to some of you about, upstairs one way, downstairs on the other side, and having the hallways kind of move that way. Challenge with that is I've got to go up this way and go all the way down and around to my class down here, which is a challenge you can do. I mean, we're built on stairs here at Seattle Lutheran, so we love to run our stairs. So that's an idea as well. I mean, I don't think with how we're scheduling how we're working hard to schedule the passing times and the other pieces that we have, I think either one would be available for this advisory group to kind of advise us on.
I think this issue of one-way hallways, I don't know, from what I was reading about a lot of the exposures, I almost wonder if being behind someone is worse than passing by them. Because I know early on, and I don't know if the information is still true because things change so much, but early on when they were looking at if you're working out and running, the place you don't want to be is behind the runner at the same pace, because then you're getting the same exposure as you go. Whereas if you're passing in the night, you're getting the one-time exposure thing. So I don't know, like I said, I haven't been tracking that, but I know early on they were talking about that. So.
But that's where the masks, I think, are important. I think that's where the diligence has to be I think as time's gone on versus passing and stuff, the mask will be that protection.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, again, I can't remember if we talked about it, but the quality of the masks, I noticed with my cloth mask, I was smelling people's cologne and car exhaust, and I'm like, okay, the virus is getting right through. So I need to upgrade my masks. But just to make sure that, you know, yeah, people have good masks.
Yeah, well, one thing though about certain things that cause odors, unless you're wearing a respirator with a real cartridge on it, you're gonna smell them. Certain things, car exhaust being one of them. You know, odorous things. A lot of they're molecules. They're not viruses or stuff like that. So unless you're wearing a cartridge mask that's built for that, you're apt to still smell that. But the mask issue, and I'm not sure who said the masks need to be approved, and I didn't put that in there because I wasn't sure who was going to do the approving, and I didn't know if teachers wanted to get in to try to do that. I mean, it's a tough issue. I don't know how to solve that, but I think one of the issues is to make sure it's at least relatively well-fitting and 2 or 3 layers of cloth, and then it seems to help, because no mask, I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's the one issue that's the public health professionals, they agree on you should wear a mask, but then a lot of them won't go as far as, say, like the CDC director and say if everybody wears a mask, the virus goes away. Most of them will say it's distance first, time, and then things like masks and all that other stuff. So that's kind of where they're going. And they're actually a little worried about this whole mask issue because a lot of people think if you wear a mask, you're safe. And that's just not true. So they're worried. They're not worried that the masks are harming anybody. They're worried that the masks are leading to people getting exposed because they think they're safe. I mean, that's the issue. So.
With the lockers being closed and not used, I don't know if, I mean, you could just remove them altogether to increase the width of that hallway. That's kind of a crazy idea, but that would give you more space. Also with the desks are 6 feet apart. Is that the deal, how they're spaced in the classroom currently?
Yeah,
Or can be?
desks and tables have been moved. I mean, of course, we got to adjust it once we get going here in August, but they've been moved to space out 6 feet distance between basically chairs or desks in
Okay.
the so with most of the teachers' desks and things still in the classroom.
And so then if someone were to walk down in between 2 desks, they would be 3 feet, right, from any other students. So when you're doing like contact tracing questions, were you within 6 feet of anyone or whatever?
Right.
Might
And
be
some of our classrooms, you could do, I mean, with the class sizes, you could do more than 6 feet, right? Because you're not going to fill up every desk because the classroom is huge. And so yeah, we're going to have to maneuver each classroom. And then we're also going to have to look at, like we talked about earlier, if you have a pre-calculus class that has this many students, it can't function in this classroom. We have to move that classroom, that group of students that's larger to that classroom. You have a AP calculus class that has 6 students. They're completely fine in any room any room here will give them 12 feet distance. So those pieces are part of that scheduling that is very, very close to being done, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Are you using the bigger rooms like the LRC and I guess even the gym for classrooms at all now that the gym is not going to be used for gym purposes?
Right. Yeah. Pretty much it's all an open thing. We don't want to force our teachers to do too much movement because of their not dependence, but how they use technology in the classroom and what that looks like. But there's definitely going to be the larger classrooms. If we have period 4, for example, that has, 3 large class sizes, students in classes, one of those is going to have to be in a larger spot so we can split it out and space it out. But concurrently, we just reminder that I love this building tremendously. It's very old. This has some issues, but my goodness, when you look at you walk into our classrooms, they're large. They're very large classrooms.
So I'm not sure if this is a board question to discuss, but the criteria upon which the school is deciding whether to open or not. I'm referencing, I think, yeah, Christina sent that Washington State coronavirus response thing that was saying that, you know, we're in the early stages of an exponential statewide outbreak. And I know I saw on J. Sarah in Orange County, a school, they had on their website, well, you know, this is the criteria. If the cases are at this level, then we can open. And if they are not, then we can't open. Is that being sort of, is that decision being, you know, like stated in, do we have a criteria like that for the decision to open?
I guess the answer is yes. The board is looking at all the factors, this report as well, as we get to them and walk through that. The hard part for us is to, you know, look at how we exist. That's what I'm trying to say. We've got to make sure that we understand who we are as a building and as a student body and as a size, and how that can safely happen. My tendency is to learn a lot from the other schools that I've looked into that are doing kind of the same thing we are, and saying, hey, this is who we're going to be, and this is what we're going to do in safety wise. Watch the surveys from parents as well, because of course, as we stated last time, our job here as this group is to put out this plan for our parents to understand that safety is a priority in what we're doing. And our teachers as well, right? Everyone involved in the process for sure. So, I mean, I think watching those things is very important. I think it's important for us to look at it from our eyeglass, you know, from where we are, and make sure that we're doing the wisest thing we can for our students. Now, all that being said, we want to make sure our families know that there are ways for them to participate if they're not comfortable with it too, right? It's a partnership with this. And that's a big thing we have to understand is you know, if you're in a larger system, you're not able to maybe offer the different partnerships that we might be able, which I said at the beginning, you know, if you're comfortable, not comfortable for a full semester, or you're just not ready, then we're going to have a partner that does online, and we're going to accept the credits and do that. And then we'll touch base with you again. So the board is looking at all that stuff. Yes. And they're the ones who are, you know, kind of guiding this process. That's why I'd like to get this to them as well.
Can I ask how the teachers are feeling about going back in person?
Stacy, you want to share your feelings?
I can share my feelings. I can't share anybody else's. So I'm mixed. I obviously want to be with my students. I want it to be the safest that it can be. And I think having procedures and things in place, if we're following recommendations, but there's always risk, you know. So I feel both, I guess is kind of where I'm at now. I want to be in school. I think we all do, right? And I want things to be as safe as possible. So as long as we can do it safely, I'd love to be there. And that's kind of what we're aiming for right now. So.
Well, we really care about you guys too. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. There is a survey that I think the teachers have all completed, or actually all the staff has completed as well. And so I'll send that link out to you. Everybody can see those results as well. One of the things on some of those things is also, I want to send a survey out after we make these kind of documentations and schedules public, right? Because we're asking people what their feeling is right now and their confidence level, but then not everybody might know what we're doing here and what the schedule is going to do and how that fits. Like, for example, we might have a teacher who does not teach Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings, right? And so they don't have to come in until noon on those days because of the schedule and how it works out. So that alleviates them maybe of the risk of getting, you know, wrapped up into the COVID response or whatever that is during that time. So a lot of that information is very handy for people to have that plan as we survey again. All right.
Are there any other areas that you guys need help with or soundboarding, like for implementation of this program, training? Or Gary, any other holes, anything within the plan that you felt needs clarification?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of holes, but I think we'll have to fill them as we go. I started looking at some of the other schools' plans that had posted, and there's still some good ideas on there, but I think there was a lot of comments, and I added in some language that this thing's probably going to change even after we get back in. If we get back in, you know, as scheduled, it might change several times just in the first couple of weeks, just to go with what new information's out, or, you know, whatever new is going on. So if I see anything that has to be in here that other people have, I'll shoot it out to you guys and Dave. But I'll revise what we talked about today, and I'll get that to you, Dave, so you can share it with the board. If anybody has any other questions or comments that they want to have addressed in here that we're not addressing, you can email me. But I'll probably try to get this out to you. What you're reading tomorrow, Dave? Is that right?
No. I just want to get it out to them tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And we'll meet.
Okay.
Probably have a Zoom next week on it.
Oh, okay. So if I get it out more middle of the day, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question about the smell. Remember, we were going to look at that smell and have a test that was legitimate, quote unquote. Any update on that, Lisa?
No, I didn't. I don't think I was going to look into that. I haven't heard any.
Lisa Britton.
Oh, the other Lisa. Sorry.
Right. Well, maybe not. Maybe she's busy.
I do see that Wendy posted a question in the chat. If X number of students or staff test positive, that the school will close, and she's wondering what, what X number should be or will be. And if there's a point that we pivot to all virtual classes before the end of, if cases rise before the end of August.
Yeah, I think we kind of addressed that with the board. I can share that with the board as well as we go through that. I mean, I think I mean, it's important to have those virtual options in place. We've talked about that already as well. So, yeah, I know some other schools are making decisions week to week. And so I think what we need to do is kind of stay focused on this piece, and make sure that the board understands all the other pieces that they have, and then we can move forward from that.
Okay, and then Lisa just wrote that her mic isn't working, but she put a smell test comment in the notes section of the actual document. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see that.
And I did see that King County, for the contact tracers, you have the training that you can go through to kind of generally learn about the virus and the method for contact tracing. But then after cases are, I think, is it 2 positive is what was in the email that I sent, King County wants to be notified of it. And you can file kind of like an intake form or whatever with them to file a report. And then I imagine that public health will kind of take over and reach out to different people and do their contact tracing at that point.
I'm curious, has anybody on this call experienced and or know someone that has experienced this the virus? Yeah. Yeah.
I do know a couple people in our church, but that was back in March, and they were elderly.
Okay.
Yeah, and ours wasn't local, but yeah, an elderly person in the family on the East Coast.
Oh. Okay.
A teacher from our middle school got it in May, late May, early June, I believe. and his small family was also infected.
Wow.
And then at my workplace, we just had one employee test positive about 2 weeks ago.
Were you guys all sent home then?
No, he was informed that he had been exposed, and so he left, and we did kind of a deep clean, and quite a few employees that had been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes went and got tested. So far, everybody that's been tested has been negative, and we haven't had any other issues, and he's still out.
That's one thing, Dave, I was going to mention that we've run into a lot is it's good to establish a health professional or some type of line that you can have to consult with, because there's so many gray things that come up that aren't concrete where, you know, someone will say, well, we were potentially near someone that's having COVID symptoms a week ago, but they're not sure if they have it. Like there's all sorts of scenarios that make you pause and you want to do the right thing. So that's something that I would just say is just be prepared to have a line to somebody that you can consult with, because you have to make a lot of decisions like fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of why having different scenarios outlined in the, you know, really clear of if these many students get sick within this proximity, then this is what's happening. Or, you know, different cases within the plan. You get sent home for X number of days and you can't come back until these 3 things or these 2 things have been satisfied. Then you don't have to think about it. You can just go to the policy and read it, and then kind of carry that out. We had a few different employees. One, his son was sick and exhibiting symptoms, and so we had asked him to stay home because it was in the household until they tested negative. And then another employee, his wife is in the medical field and was sent home due to potential exposure. And we asked him, but we asked the employees to reach out to their healthcare provider for guidance and keep us informed as kind of another layer as well. So it's not us telling the employee they can't come to work, but it's us telling them to seek professional medical advice as well.
Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of that come up where we advise, you know, to stay away to be safe, but we have not sounded the alarm to the whole program until you have concrete confirmed cases. We had a case last week in Puyallup where children were exhibiting some symptoms, but we consulted and they said until it's a confirmed case, you don't have to alert the whole entire, you know, body, because it sends a hysteria, right? And it turns out next day they had those results that were negative, but they stayed away, they, you know, just to be on the safe side. So it gets tricky, that quick decision making.
Yeah. Well, and the idea here, I think maybe, you know, we can have this document and get it ready to them, but I think the board's probably going to come back to this group and say, okay, what are, like, there's a lot of questions being thrown out here about number of cases and this and that, and I'll just be flat out honest. I'm not a COVID expert, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at other schools and reading reports and seeing what other people are doing to try to find some common ground with this. You know, we have some just like in our society, there's some that are doing this and some are doing this. And so we want to make what we can and be the most safe that we can be who we are, but taking into guidelines what those are. So rather than, you know, maybe throw this, you know, questions to this extent right now, I think maybe we should all think about that and maybe come back again with, okay, here are some of those policies and procedures that we want to put forth for Dave to follow and for the board to approve. Because I mean, I think they're going to, a lot of them are going to say the same thing, which all of you are saying the same thing too. We're not COVID experts either. But I think what we can do is, from the experience that I'm hearing from all of you already, I think we can put a pretty good policy stuff together that would have some teeth. And then that would goes to what Gary's saying about, if we have this group and we have our board and we have our teachers, everybody understanding this is what's going to happen when this happens, then we're all unified and walking on the same. If it's 10 cases, it's 2 cases, this is what we're going to do. I think that's really important for all of us. So maybe what we can take away from this is, okay, now that we've got this procedure in place, maybe let's put some policy behind it from the knowledge of this group, and say, okay, I, both personally comfortable with, as a parent, this many cases. I'm not comfortable with 0. Well, of course, we're all want 0, but where are we with that? And then say, hey, this is the plan that we want to put forward. So I don't mean to be pushing it back to everybody, but I also want to make sure that you're not expecting me just to come back with all the answers from the board either, because I think they're going to say, well, what do they think? Right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. You have to agree upon your safeguard plan as an organization. And so whatever those details are, come together on it.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about too is if we have a contact at Public Health Seattle King County, I don't know what kind of services they've been providing, or if they, because they're the experts that would be able to say, this is our situation. What should we be doing? And I don't know what kind of services they're doing. I think the benefit for us is, if all the other schools aren't going, there's only a few schools left, and all private schools actually, that look like they're going to make a go of it. We might be able to get some, I won't say consulting, but we might be able to get some feedback on the right things to do if a situation comes up. But I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't think it's for a parent to call. It's Dave or Glenn or someone to just say, hey, look, who's available? How do we contact you? And what the response is, because it seems like, I know in other cases, that's their job. I don't know with COVID if they're just so overwhelmed that they can do that or not. But that was kind of the thought I had.
I know that the King County Department of Health has some.
And if this was in
regulations
Tacoma, I would do it for you, but I don't know anybody in Seattle. Sorry.
You were saying King County Department of Health?
Yeah, the King County Department of Health has regulations in place for businesses, at least, to say if you have this number of cases, you do this. If you have this number of cases, you do that. So I don't know if that would apply to a school as well, but like Gary said, someone at the Department of Health probably has a good answer for that.
Perfect. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Gary, again for doing all that. Thank you, everybody, again. Here's what I think our timeline should be is if we can get this midday tomorrow, I'll send it out to our board and then ask them to reconvene or send information back probably by Tuesday or so of next week. And then from there, I'll loop everybody in onto what questions they might have, where we are, what are we doing next with that. And then I'm hoping to have another town hall here in, very short order to all of our families to have some kind of a document presentation and all those kind of things, not word for word, but, outlay it and then have it publicized to everybody as we're moving forward with that. Along with that comes with the stages that I talked about at the very beginning, different stages that we'll have being ready for a response for what happens to us. So how does that sound for everybody? Everybody available? Just again, if you're not available, I will record all the information and we'll send it out via links to everybody so we can all be on the same page. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good, Dave.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Great.
Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the beautiful day.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.